Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Leverage Redemption, Season 3, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So when we kind of got to the cold opening of this episode, obviously it takes a little while before you figure out what the episode's about, but yeah, opening up with, because I thought the case was going to mainly revolve around the guy who was coming after his ex, and then the guy attacking the gun because he's a disturbed ex who was coming after. She's like, I got a restraining order against you, and this guy that's in the restaurant saves her but gets shot in the process. And I thought did it have something to do with that? But it's like, no, the guy in particular, basically his defense, basically they're suing the company that makes these 3D printed. They're like, we don't sell printed guns, we just sell the kit, and what you do with it is kind of on you, so we shouldn't be liable. Because it's the thing of, because they can just sell the kit to anyone, there is no not like a gun where there's supposed to be a background check. This kind of slips into that gray area of legality where it's like you're not legally obligated to do something like that. You just have to, because you're not selling an actual gun, you're selling a kit that can make a gun. But it's just such a it's such a gray area situation. But the problem is the judge is a judge that can easily get bought off, which I should also say, I got super excited when I saw it was Rachel Harris. I was like, oh, please tell me you're going to be the good guy in this episode. And it's like, no. The moment she was looking up bourbon stuff in the during the court case, I was like, okay, you're not a good person, especially when the court case wasn't going Harry's side of things because he's kind of co-seating this trial. But the judge wasn't listening to anything they had to say. So, and obviously Brianna went back to the squad and told him yeah, Harry's kind of getting beat up in court, so we're going to have to potentially help him out. So even before he went to ask the team for help, they ended up helping him. So they could, Elliot got concocted in this whole almost doomsday prepper militia guy to get close to the CEO of this 3D printer company. The dude's name is Steve, and they're trying to get close to him so they can find some evidence, because ultimately they concoct all of this. Obviously Brianna made a fake following for Elliot's character, but ultimately they got the evidence they needed out of the safe. But Harry laughs at them, and they're like, what are you laughing at? It's we got proof of stuff like that. He's like, oh no, basically to prove that a judge in this particular regard it actually took a bribe, they have to literally, as Parker says, so you literally have to say it's a quid pro quo situation. It's it literally has to be that, because he's it's very not that often a judge or someone in the law that kind of gets, I guess things work a little differently. Maybe it's a little easier maybe with cops, maybe judges and stuff like that. It's a little harder. But yeah, Harry couldn't help but laugh. But it's let's not forget, Harry used to defend bad people, so he knows the legality of the. It sounds redundant to say it, but it's the legality of the law of just oh yeah, this sounds icky, and it is icky, but at the end of the day, it is super legal, and it's just kind of that thing of even criminals, and the team has to comes to this realization over and over again, where it's just really that, and it's wow. We're up here doing all this crime, but there's people who are legally committing crime. It's yeah, that is how this is. If you know the legal world enough, you can skirt around a lot of stuff without bumping into too much issues. So, but yeah, they have to literally get the judge to take the money and say, hey, I'm taking this money to do XYZ with it, to do you a favor. But it's how do you get someone to do that? Which this whole thing gives Brianna an idea that it's well, we don't have to do it physically, we can do it digitally, saying hey, let's make a guy, which is where the episode title comes from. She basically Frankenstein's using amalgamation software of taking bits and pieces of different people just to create the perfect like businessman that someone want to interact with and do business with. And then she, in the process, ends up creating Frank, which I was like, oh, that's kind of a neat way to go about that. That's really interesting. But obviously, it presents a problem for Rhiannon, where it's just like this guy that she just made up just because he looks the way he does, says like, and you get like you manipulate things digitally and you can like push things along. Like she's like, literally 5 billionaires come out of nowhere wanting to do business with me when I'm able to present just this particular guy's face. And she's even kind of doing like mocapping tech to basically and a voice changer to be Frank and make him move and talk. So I was like, oh, that's so interesting and dope. So obviously this is able to take them pretty far. You take that in conjunction with the way they're pushing Judge Gannon, Rachel Harris's character, is by making it so that she needs capital immediately and make it so that she can't get by with just like giving away a check. It has to be like a bag of money. And basically her family's into bourbon and stuff like that. And there's certain casks that create certain flavors. And Elliot's playing this guy that's like, oh, I'm going to sell these for like $20,000 a pop. I need the cash immediately. So she needs like, physical cash. So the situation comes at the perfect time. And so the crew is trying to manipulate the situation to get her to basically shut down like Steve's case and kind of dismiss, turn things in that favor, so like the judge isn't like helping his case anymore because Frank is like from a 3D printing company, and the whole situation with Steve's 3D printing case could collide and cause issues for their company. That's kind of their in. But the problem is Steve is, I don't know, decently paranoid, where he's like, yeah, this guy could be trying to screw me over because we're in the same field of business. So he could be trying to like screw me over by like pushing you to kind of screw me over during the case. And so now they're forced to have to meet in person. So it's like, well, what do? You went through the trouble of making a fake guy that can't show up to this real meeting. But and I like how Brianna found out, like, bro, I found a guy that looks exactly like Frank. I basically backtracked from all the details of the stuff my system amalgamated. And I found someone who fit that pretty closely, and ended up finding, Tim, who's just like kind of dumb as bricks pool cleaner. And they show up as like federal agents. They're not FBI agents, but they're from a very specific unit of like, oh yeah, it's like stolen identities and stuff, and they need his help. And he's like, whoa, and they need him to be protected. And I love that every step of the way, he'll say something that just like, really? They're just like mystified by how, idiotic he is. He's very like, he's like, oh, like, I'm a skater, bro. Or at least, because they made some comparison later in the episode. He's like, well, I'm more of a skater dude or something like that. Obviously, Brianna kind of starts getting a little frustrated with him because they need him to play the role of Tim and stuff like. I mean, Tim needs to play the role of Frank, and he's not doing it. He's not nailing it. But and even Parker kind of realizes, like, I get it. She's like, I know you're kind of feeling a lot of feelings right now, and she's like, yeah, talking, with the puppets, which I constantly forget. Like, right, that's kind of Parker's like therapeutic steps on like how she deals with stuff is through the puppets. I completely forgot about that. But she talks about like, right, you're taking a lot of your frustrations out on Tim, and he kind of doesn't deserve that. It's just because Brianna is so, as she brought up the point early on, like someone with Tim's face is so gifted that like the world will bend over backwards for him because he looks the way he does. And she's like, that's frustrating. And it's like, and even, it's like, right, Tim doesn't recognize the power he has. Being a handsome white dude, you can get pretty far in life, and, from her perspective. And so for her, it's like, you can literally have the world thrown at you and you don't even recognize it. And that's just more frustrating of like, it's more frustrating to someone who is taking advantage of it. It's someone who doesn't know the power that they wield, and it makes it that much more frustrating. But, with enough hard work, they do get Tim to kind of, pull through and stuff like that. So he's able to walk the walk, talk the talk. I also love, like, it's a bit thing, like, doesn't much come of it, but it's presented throughout the episode where, like, Judge Gannon is constantly, like, flirting with Elliot's, like, character a little bit, where she's almost kind of like, ooh, especially when they were talking about like the musk the barrel and stuff like that, kind of getting all close and like hot and bothered by it and stuff. So I just thought that was funny. And she was just kind of gave a little bit of the same energy when she was looking at Frank, but definitely the most when she was interacting with Elliot, which I feel so bad for Elliot when he's in that position where he has to bounce between Steve and Judge Gannon because, you know, he's playing two different roles, so he can't let the other one see him play the opposite role. And then Sophie's not being much help because she's like, oh, come on, like I had to play like 5 different characters at the same situation. And it's like, I feel like she's referenced that specific situation in the past before too, where it's just like, but I mean, obviously we can't all be you, Sophie Devereaux. You are a beast all on your own. And so, but yeah, him bouncing back and forth between both roles, I thought was kind of neat. And it helps out a lot when you're able to isolate them. To be fair, they're still in the same room. They're just on opposite ends of the room, but still playing it up and being so crazy. You're keeping Steve in his place, but also being like very tantalizing and tempting towards Judge Gannon, because it's like, oh, you're kind of seducing her, but you're also tempting her with like the flavors of the bourbon from these casks that she's like, oh my God, like there's so few left in the world, like this very specific flavor. So there's a lot there. I mean, especially with her family's bourbon outright being horrendous, that everyone encounters it being like, this is god awful. So this is supposed to be her opportunity to kind of add some more fuel to the fire of her family's bourbon situation. So, but I also got to give it up to Tim that he did lock it in when he was talking to not only Judge Gannon, but also at one point Steve. At the point, like him and Steve kind of were like, yeah, because he's like, yeah, you gotta be like a predator, you gotta be like an eagle and stuff like that, saying all this stuff, and Steve super resonated with it, and I love that little like high like that God, what would you even call it? The whole like, I guess handshake, dap / high five thing that Brianna and Parker did, which I'm like, have they done that before? I don't remember. Maybe they did, and I just don't remember. I was like, man, that's so like, I'm so curious, like how long it took Beth and Elise to kind of nail that perfectly, because that's super complicated. Am I pronouncing her name right? I don't think I've ever said her name out loud before, have I? I don't think so. I mean, it looks like phonetically you say it, like pronounce it like Elise, but I could be wrong. But either way, just I'm so curious like how long it took her, both of them, to kind of get that down pat. I was like, that, like I said, that's extra super complicated. But a wrinkle in the case ends up being Tim having, you know, circumstances of his own. And I was curious to see how they were going to bring that back in, because when he was away taking a phone call, it was about his mom's house kind of being foreclosed and like banks trying to take it from her. And so he used his opportunity to try and take this money, but it ended up being, well, Harry tried to talk to him, but it ended up, funny enough, being Brianna, who ended up kind of convincing him, like, no, you were made for this. This is your chance and your opportunity. He's like, yeah, the algorithm chose you. He's like, yeah, math chose me, and math is never wrong. And Brianna's like, no, but sure, whatever it takes to kind of give you confidence. And so he ended up pulling through. But the problem is Steve really believing, because they did such a good job tanking his reputation with all these comments and kind of messing with the stock prices and stuff, because they were just trying to buy enough time to keep him distracted. But he did such a great job that he strongly believes, it kind of goes back to the point he believed before, that, hey, this other CEO of a company is trying to destroy my reputation. So I was like, wow. So he's kind of running, well, he gets away with the money, but and then he goes to deal with someone. He thought he was actually meeting a FBI agent to like be like, oh my God, this guy is trying to bribe a judge or whatever. But then like one of the 3D guns he had is there. Ironically enough, the location where all this cases took place inside that restaurant, it's the same restaurant. And I was looking at the guy, I was like, the guy he's in front of seems familiar. Where do I recognize him from? Oh, he's the juror that the guy Harry's working with this episode during the court case was like, yeah, juror number 5 is the one you pay attention to, because he's actually jotting down notes. And now it looks like you were holding him at gunpoint and you're bribing him. It's like, yeah, I'm a juror from your case. And it's like, whoa, that's not what's happening here. And then he sees Elliot, Sophie, Brianna, and Parker all there, and he's like, "Oh, you guys are setting me up." Tries to run, but Sophie already called the cops in advance. They show up and arrest him, and this basically kablooies his case. And it leads to a mistrial, but this puts them in a more favorable position of now they're going to get a different judge when they like refile and stuff like that, so they'll be able to like get a fair trial. So it's like we didn't skew everything in their complete favor, but this, like, you know, with a proper judge, they could handle this from they have a clear enough case, to deal with this legally. And also Harry brought Tim's case to that guy, and it's like, well, because they didn't do the right paperwork when it was something with Tim's mom's place, and so it's like there's a good chance of kind of getting them out of the situation they're in. But then what about Judge Gannon? It seemed like, well, she kind of still walks away from all of this. Well, they destroyed her reputation because she's trying to run for some political situation, but she's like get reelected or something like that. But it's like, oh, you don't have to worry about that because they made it so like, hey, this guy left your place with a whole bunch of money. It's like, this guy's a pool cleaner. It's like, no, he's the CEO. And then it's like, nope, there's Frank literally Tim really leaving your dressed in pool shorts, leaving, and like, yeah, her husband wants nothing to do with her, locks her out of the house and stuff. So yeah, it kind of shoots her in the foot with any other, because Harry had made the whole point of, yeah, you get put in that situation of enough bribes and stuff like that. All it takes is one little scandal to ruin any attempt to mount a campaign and stuff like that. So she's kind of screwed in that point. So there was some justice handled in that front. So, but I also love the conversation that Sophie and Brianna have at the end of the episode, where she kind of has a different perspective on the whole situation now, where she kind of, because it was kind of like this thing of, I forgot what Sophie was coming from the perspective of kind of like things aren't so clear cut like what you assume. And it's like, yes, more often than not, people who look like Tim can be in an advantage situation of, because there was something good out of it, because they made it so that Frank died in like a skiing accident, and all like the money and stuff, they used it and pushed it towards, good causes against, like, for causes against gun violence type of situation. It's like, yeah, something good came about it, but also made Brianna look at things from a different perspective of, just because Tim is the way he is, like, that doesn't also make him fortunate. Like, you could look like Tim and still not have the luck of the draw, because it's like, people with sincerity don't always get the luck of draw. It's the people who don't care, who are terrible people like a Steve, who are able to kind of make things work for their favor. But like, and I love that, like, at the end of the day, Sophie said the line of, it's kind of like what we're sitting at right now is kind of what it all comes down to. It's, that's what it all goes back to the con. It's two people sitting at the table having two different conversations. And I was like, ooh, that's so beautiful. I don't know if they've ever phrased conning like that. And I was like, that's such a, I don't know, there's something beautifully poetic about phrasing it that way. Two people at the same table having two different conversations. I was like, that's such a neat phrasing of that. So yeah, just all around, everything obviously resolved like in good old leverage fashion. Something I also wanted to kind of talk about that I didn't think about talking about last episode was, because I talked about Noah Wyle, but I was like, because obviously Aldous Hodge he hasn't been in the show in general that much, but I thought about it, it's like, well, because probably like busy production wise with other stuff, because I was like, probably during season 1 and stuff like that was probably around the time, I think he was still doing City on a Hill at that time. And maybe that kind of crossed over with season 2 as well. And especially with this season, this might have crossed over while he was doing, Cross. So I didn't even think about that at the time. So, but like I said, he was already not going to be he's not in the show a lot. Obviously, he was popping in here and there, like in season 2. But yeah, it still wasn't in it a lot. So I didn't even think about that until like the episode started. I was like, all right. I was like, I did kind of forget, like he would have been working on City on a Hill and Cross maybe during overlapping with some of the production of these seasons. So that's extra reason why he's not there a lot. And obviously he's got his, baby sis to like she fills that hacker role in the group regardless. So, but either way, I kind of went off on a tangent there at the end, so I'm sorry. But I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us. Once again, next situation, our bad guys or who are good guys find themselves in. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.